a state representative going into my junior and third term in the Florida House, and I'm also the Florida state chair for ALEC. So I took over that role this year.
Thank
so
you
happy to do that. This is my third ALEC conference that I've been to since I've been elected, and enjoying it. But what intrigued me is I heard your presentation, not all of it, about the lack of staffing and support for state legislatures.
Yes, tell us.
And this is something that I have written about as a member of the Florida House, and have gotten a little bit of traction with. But I think we need to reform and reimagine and reinvent the way that we are doing legislative business in the state of Florida, and probably around the country as well. And a couple of things that I have thought about. Over the last decade, I think there've only been 2 or 3 sessions where we've finished on time in Florida, right? Which tells me that we cannot do the work that people have hired us to do in the 60 days that we're required to do it in. And we've had 4 special sessions this year. Probably will have a 5th in November. So there's something very wrong there.
Yeah, that seems like a structural problem. And I'm wondering if other states are also seeing this addition of these special sessions.
Yeah, I think they are, particularly states with a part-time legislature.
Right.
And I know we're at ALEC, but I would say, in the research that I've done, NCSL, which is another large organization like ALEC, they no longer classify the Florida state legislature as a part-time legislature, even though that's what we are constitutionally. But if their analysis shows that the amount of hours we're working, the work that we're doing, we are not a part-time legislature anymore in reality. And I think that that's also true. But
so will they consider you part-time because how many months of the year are you in?
Yeah, so we are in session 60 days a year consecutively, but leading up to that, we have about 6 weeks of what we call committee weeks that are staggered throughout the year. So you're really in Tallahassee about 4 months a year. That's not including special sessions. But last year we were in Tallahassee, I think 22 out of 52 weeks, which is certainly not a part-time job. And you look at Florida too. We've gone from in 1968 when we completed our constitution that we work under now, that set up the legislature the way it is. We had about 5 million people in Florida. We now have 22 million people, and to expect that the same workload with a dramatic increase in constituents, it's just not feasible.
No, that's just not realistic. And what is your staff situation like? You as a state lawmaker, what does the typical state lawmaker have?
Yeah, so a state lawmaker in Florida generally has 2 staff members, one which will accompany you to Tallahassee and will engage in the legislative policy work that you're doing, and then another which mans your district office and does more of a constituent service basis. Now, I feel like I could employ 6 people full-time very easily. And we could not survive without interns that we use as well. But right now, I know this is not, really maybe on topic, but we are also suffering from the same things that plague the private sector. In Florida, a staff member makes $34,000, and I have a vacancy right now. I simply cannot hire anyone that will work for that pay in Florida. I mean, in Southwest Florida, it's really impossible to live on a salary of $34,000. I mean, we're paying teachers in Florida $47,500 to start, but legislative staffers, we can't pay them any more than that. So that's a problem too.
Yeah. Are these issues that you want to share and network with other state lawmakers here at ALEC to say, hey, are you experiencing this? What are you doing? Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's time for Florida to at least have the discussion about reforming the state legislature, and having that discussion about should we actually reclassify ourselves as a hybrid legislature or even a full-time legislature, or if we want to remain a part-time legislature, how can we structure this so that we can do the people's business in 60 days? Because right now we simply can't do that.
Do you have any sense of what your constituents, what they would think of these sort of restructures? Or do constituents in Florida want a limited, small state government? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that generally speaking, a smaller, limited government can do less damage, right?
Yes, exactly.
And what was it Mark Twain said? Your life, property, and liberty are never safe when the legislature's in session.
Right.
There's a lot of truth to that, but I will tell you this: a constituent that would call my office for help, and if someone answers the phone and said, "Oh, we're sorry, Representative Roach is not here. This is a part-time job. Call back in 8 months when they're in session. We'll try to help you." That's unacceptable for most constituents as well. So it's hard to balance that out with the expectation your constituents have that you're on the job full-time, full service all the time, with the reality of the fact that you have to go out and make a living on your own, and also go to Tallahassee 4 months a year on a $29,000 a year salary with very little staff to help you out.
It's almost an impossible situation. I'm going to share a story. I have, I live in Virginia. My state in Virginia, we call them delegates. They go to the House of Delegates. He's my state delegate. A few months ago, I had an issue. My son is out of state, serving a mission for our church and limited access to the internet. And he lost his driver's license and he needed it. And so he contacted me and said, Mom, can you help me? And I was trying to go directly through our state DMV. And as you know, those DMVs can be very bureaucratic. And I was just sort of in this endless loop of, well, you need this form to verify, but well, I can't get that form until I, get this. And it went on for about 2 or 3 months. And I finally reached out to my state delegate, David Bulliva in Virginia. And it was hilarious. I emailed him, and about half an hour later, I was in Costco picking up milk, and I get an email back from him right away. He says, hey, Catherine, saw your email. This is who you need to contact at DMV. Here's her name and number. She's expecting a call from you tomorrow. Because this was like 7:30 at night. So the next day, boom, I called her and I got the problem resolved. And I was just amazed at how responsive my state delegate was and how impactful that was. Like, he knew the right person. Is that the kind of stuff that you do as well?
Yeah, that is absolutely the bread and butter of what we should be doing in constituent casework. And look, I think every representative strives to be as engaged and responsive as your delegate was.
It
and
was amazing.
That's great, constituent service. Because look, we do work for these people, and we take that role very seriously. We are there to help them navigate the bureaucracy and the machinery of government.
That's exactly, yeah.
But it is difficult to be that responsive all the time.
Right. I know. I was amazed too.
And the other thing I would point out too, when you're talking about reforming the legislature and the workload, and I go back to 1968 in Florida's 6th Constitution, which set up the legislature now, every House member then was representing about 54,000 constituents. Now our House members are representing about 190,000 constituents. So to try to pretend that the workload has not increased when you have 100,000 more customers, that's simply just not reality.
Right.
So we need to look at, I think, giving those legislators, particularly in Florida, more support, more staff, and maybe even some incentives to keep those staff members on.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your perspective. And is there anything in particular here at ALEC that you're looking forward to learning about or sharing with others?
Yeah. So I serve on 2 of the task forces, the Federalism and International Relations, and I'll be presenting a bill tomorrow dealing with Taiwan, which is a hot topic right now. If you're following, the Speaker of the House and her visit to Taiwan.
What is going on with that? I've just been seeing some tweets. What's the
well, look, I'm no big fan of Nancy Pelosi, but I do think certainly there's a role for America to play in stabilizing Taiwan and protecting them from the threat of China. And I did get to visit Taiwan 2 years ago as a 6-member delegation from Florida. So we are one of their largest trading partners. I think the 2nd largest trading partner with Taiwan. And so that's a strategic area of interest for Florida and the United States. So I don't think that a Speaker of the Congress, United States Congress, should be intimidated by the Chinese. They're now saying she should not visit there. We don't take orders from the Chinese.
That's what it is.
Even though I'm not a big fan of Nancy Pelosi, I do think that she has a role to play and would encourage her to visit and stand up to the Chinese there. So I'll be presenting a bill on that subject tomorrow in that task force, and I'll also serve on the criminal justice task force. And criminal justice reform is something we're very focused on in the state of Florida as well.
Right. Well, we'll be hearing from your Attorney General, Ashley Moody, today on her initiative with human trafficking.
Right.
And has that been something that she has worked jointly with the legislature on to make these reforms?
Absolutely. She's been very engaged with the Florida House and the Florida Senate. We have some of those reps here that she's worked very closely with on some of our anti-human trafficking legislation. But all of those things are areas of interest to me, and I hope most of the ALEC members here. So we're just getting started today, the first real day of the ALEC conference. So stay tuned and stay engaged.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Spencer, for just hopping in and being.
Final plug for ALEC. How valuable is ALEC to a state legislator like yourself that doesn't have a staff?
Yeah. So ALEC and organizations like them can serve as sort of a real, not even a de facto, but a real sort of think tank for legislative ideas, model policy, and they have that resource of staffing and experts that we don't always have as members of the legislature. So we do rely on them quite a bit, and I love it. It's a great place for like-minded folks to come together, and I always learn something here. And the other last plug I would make is, there are a lot of other Republican members here, but they have very diverse views about the future of some of these legislative initiatives. So it's interesting to see people that have the same political party affiliation, the same mindset, the same principles, but can, have a widely divergent approach on these policy issues. So I always go back with more ideas than I came in with. Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Spencer. That was a very nice plug for ALEC. We appreciate hearing that.